We're watching Morning Live. Thanks so much for tuning in. Now, yesterday, the Democratic Alliance announced Tshwane Mayor Solly Msimanga as their candidate for the Gauteng Premier in the 2019 elections. Msimanga has been a DA member for 14 years and 9 candidates applied for the position, with the most prominent among them being Makashule, Gana, of course, and also Msimanga. Gauteng MPLs, others than Gana and Msimanga were Ghaleb, Cachalia, and national spokesperson Refiloe Nt'sheke. Now, the party is also looking to win the country's economic heartland, and they plan to do that outright in next year's provincial and national elections. And I'm joined now in studio by Solly Msimanga. Thanks so much for coming through, and congratulations. Thank
you very much, Sakina, and good morning to you and the listeners, or the viewers.
Many people were surprised when you actually applied for the position, never mind winning it, considering that many held you, and I'm sure Makashule Gana did as well, as a very close friend and ally within the so-called DA Black Caucus. You were at his campaign launch, and many people thought that was an endorsement of Gana. So what happened?
Well, Sakina, I think one of the things that we need to get out from the get-go is that this has never been a competition, Solly versus Gana. It's been about presenting an idea and then getting that idea to be, evaluated by a panel, being subjected to a number of interviews, or even a screening test, if you like, where you have to put your thoughts in writing and how you would then go about turning the province around. And that also gets marked independently without names attached to the scripts, so that there is impartiality in doing that. So, the issue of whether it was a Gana versus Solly, no, it's not. And also one of the things that we pride ourselves in the Democratic Alliance has also been able, to put ourselves out there, and whoever wins, rally behind that particular person. I had a meeting with Gana and others on Saturday, where we even pledged before the announcement that we are going to support whoever the candidate would have been.
One would expect that, but when did you decide? Because as I said, when you were at his launch, and I remember speaking to people about that, the idea was, and at least people thought, that you were supporting his campaign. So when did it occur to you to enter the race?
Well, let's go back to the issue of the launch. When we were invited to a bioscope, not to an official launch. That's number one. The second thing is, I did have a chat with Gana, and there are people that approach me in the party to say, look, we're seeing what you're doing in Tshwane. We see what you have, the systems that you've put in place. We understand your track record. Being an administrator of the party, being somebody who's been the regional and the provincial chairperson, being somebody who's been a councillor, a member of the provincial legislature, and now being the executive mayor. We think that you would better be able to then serve what we want to do as a province, and we'll be able to then garner much more support if it's you at the helm, and therefore we want you to stand. And obviously, these are normal branch people that are putting this, and in Gauteng, who are saying, look, we think that we will be able to then rally behind you, and we'll be able to then sell you much more. So those are things that one has to consider. Do I want to get to 2019, look back and said, well, we didn't win because I didn't avail myself? Because that would be one of the things that, one would have to ask themselves. And I said, well, let me put myself up, and then whether it's Refiloe or Cachalia or Gana that wins at the end of the day, or Solly Msimanga that wins at the end of the day, the DA needs to put his best foot forward.
I think everyone will agree that it's fair play. But what were the reasons they told you they thought you would be easier to sell or more sellable to the Gauteng electorate?
Well, I think, Sakina, it's what I've mentioned before. The fact that, we come a long way in the party. Personally, what I have been able to achieve in the administration of the party, being the provincial chairperson of the party, and before that being the regional chairperson of the party, how we have been able to rally our own members or our own structures to go out there and do what needs to be done, how we've been able to work the ground, how we've been able to then articulate some of the positions that we have as the Democratic Alliance. That is what people then said, no, you will be able to then put that forward much better.
One would imagine that you've applied your mind to this as a mayor of Tshwane at the moment. If you were to win, how would you juggle? How are you going to do? What are you going to do if you were to win?
If I were to win
the premiership of the province.
Well, if I'm to win the premiership of the province, means that I will have to then take over, the reins. You talk about the implementation. What do we want to implement? Okay,
absolutely.
So there's 5 things that I want to focus on, and this emanates also from the experience that we've had at the local level, where we have seen that from a local level, we haven't really been having much support as we would have loved to from the province. There's the need to better coordinate the fight against crime in our cities, and in the province. So we now need to focus on ensuring that as Gauteng, we coordinate what the South African Police Services and the Metro Police Services is doing across our cities and in the province of Gauteng. We've suffered a lot of losses due to vandalism, due to infrastructure damage, and also the scourge of the hijackings that have been taking place, the scourge of robberies that have been taking place are things that needs to be addressed. We're looking at the issue of how do we also ensure that there's a fairer access to jobs and more jobs that will be created in the province of Gauteng. Gauteng is and should be the heartbeat of the economy of not only South Africa but of Africa as a whole. So those are things that we now need to be focusing on. We're also now talking about the scourge of drugs that has been ravaging our cities in Gauteng. How do we then have a coordinated effort in doing that? Also, how do we also ensure that in the long run we are able to assist or work with the municipalities in coordinating service delivery to ensure that services are better delivered to our people? What we have seen, Sakina, is province will be planning this way and implementing this way, while cities are implementing that way. And that has a huge problem in terms of addressing backlogs, where we have seen province delivering houses that way, but we're delivering water and electricity another way. So there needs to be a better coordination in terms of how we are able to then, drive the Gauteng city region forward.
I want to ask more about that and also incorporate our viewers' questions, because we asked them if they had some questions. But before we just go to those, we said you talked about service delivery and how you are being hamstrung in certain ways in that regard. The electorate doesn't really care for those sort of difficulties. What they want is for the water to flow out of their taps, for them to flick a switch and see the lights come on. They want service delivery, and there is a complaint of a lack of service delivery. Also, e-tolls. What's the situation regarding that? And also the upgrading of infrastructure generally in the province. These are the things that are top of mind for the electorate.
Well, you're absolutely right. And that's why I'm saying there needs to be a better coordination. A couple of months ago, I did call, a few of the mayors, Mayor of Johannesburg, the Mayor of Ekurhuleni. We sat around a room and say, how do we safeguard our infrastructure as an example? We have suffered more than 200 million rand in the last year alone in terms of cable theft that has been taking place. South African Police Services has never prioritized this. And we are saying, as a province, we need to make sure that there is a coordinated effort in making sure that you're able to address that. Because the more money you're spending on repairing that which shouldn't have been broken in the first place, the less money you have to implement newer programs and also being able to ensure that you're able to roll out new infrastructure upgrade enrollment programs and also upgrades in certain areas. So that is things that needs to be coordinated at a provincial level. Looking at the issue of what you raise as a concern of people wanting to have water, people wanting to have electricity, you're absolutely right. The municipality can plan, but also the funding, your grants will be coming from the provincial and national government. And so if we're not planning well with the municipalities, we'll miss the mark. And this is why from what we've seen in the municipality, if we're not able to coordinate and have a very good working, cordial relationship with the provincial government. I promise you we'll continue to have service delivery protests on a daily basis.
Let's call up those tweets from our listeners. Quick fire questions, very brief answers. And let me throw the first one before we get those viewers' ones up. The first one is, you're going to be campaigning for the Premier position. How is that going to affect service delivery?
Well, there needs to be priorities, and I said that we're not going to be abandoning the people of Tshwane. That's one of the things that we're not going to do, and I'm surprised that I'm asked of that. The Premier is going to be campaigning. The incumbent Premier is going to be campaigning. The President is going to be campaigning. They're not going to be neglecting their duties. So that is going to continue to happen.
Yeah, okay? But you at the coalface as the Mayor of Tshwane. You are at the coalface, they may not be. Let's go to TM. TM says the Mayor has already shown that he's prone to corrupt practices. What would we, the people of Gauteng, why would we vote for such a person?
Well, what does it mean, corrupt? I'm really prone
He's
to
probably
corrupt.
Talking about the qualification scandals. I'm imagining, TM, you can write us another tweet.
That will assist. But let me just clear a number of things. One is that when these allegations came up, we've subjected all the officials, and I'm getting a report to a verification process and an investigation around that. There is an issue that is now also rearing up about the PMU that I've also subjected to an investigation, and will also be making a pronouncement on that. So if there's issues of corruption or maladministration that raise its ugly head, we'll then have to deal with those.
All right. Nosinto asks, is there anything the Mayor has done for persons with disabilities? If yes, speak specifically, specify a few.
All right. I think a number of things. We do have a disability desk in my office. So we do look at the issues of dealing with people of disability, or difficulties of people with disabilities in terms of access.
In terms of specifics?
In terms of jobs as well. So we do have, a number of interns and a number of people that have been employed, or people living with disabilities in our offices who are doing great work. And we are doing outreach programs as well in terms of assisting people living with disabilities.
But I guess Nosinto wants a specific example of something that you've done.
Well, there's as I'm saying, we already have a disability desk that is looking at an array of things.
But you would think the desk, Mayor, is about implementation in other areas. So specifics in that regard?
The jobs that we have actually ensured that the people living with disabilities are actually occupying. We have somebody who's just graduated now, somebody who's blind who's just graduated now with their master's degree, who's employed in the city of Tshwane, who's also assisting other people living with disabilities, to progress not only in getting promotions in the city of Tshwane, but also to progress academically as well. So those are things that we are able to coordinate and we are putting out there.
Mayor Solly Msimanga, thanks for stopping by and answering some of our questions there, and some of your questions as well. And thanks to the Mayor of Tshwane. And of course, yesterday he was announced as the DA's candidate for the Gauteng Premier position in the 2019 elections. Well, we're going to go to a break.